What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and we're less than a day away from the next CPI inflation read, and we're going to take a look at the numbers and see what could be in store for us. Now, most analysts are calling for a relatively tame inflation read, especially considering the red-hot 5.4% number we got back in June. But there may be a ticking time bomb inside these inflation numbers that could send us much higher. You ready? Hit it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble, and I'm Nobody Special. And we're just hours away from the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, reading for the month of July. Now, CPI is the government's best measure of inflation, or so they say, and analysts are expecting a relatively tame reading, especially considering last month's red-hot 5.4%. Now, before we get into the numbers, if you guys wouldn't mind smashing that like button, subscribing to my channel, and hitting that notification bell, it would really help me out. I would be forever in your debt. Now that that's out of the way with, let's get into the numbers. Now, first, I want to emphasize one thing about CPI. CPI is a rate of change. So if the CPI number comes in lower than it did last month, that doesn't mean prices went down. That means prices rose less. Any CPI in positive territory means prices are still going up. You'll hear terms like disinflation, or deflation, or deflationary. When you hear disinflation, that's referring to prices rising slower. When you hear deflation, you're hearing about prices going down. If you hear deflationary, you're referring to any force that puts downward pressure on prices. Again, doesn't necessarily mean prices have gone down. I want to emphasize that the CPI measures a rate of change. It doesn't measure actual prices. Also, you're going to hear two different numbers. The headline number is going to be the year-over-year change, the measure of prices in July 2021 versus prices in July 2020. You're also going to hear the month-over-month change, the measure of prices in July 2021 over the prices in June 2021. The more important one, the number most people are going to pay attention to, is going to be that year-over-year number. Now, last month we got a red-hot 5.4% read. It was the highest in years. And it really spooked markets that inflation was getting out of control, especially given the Federal Reserve's relatively flippant approach to inflation, saying it was transitory and that they have the tools to address it. Now, since the last read came out, we've seen some of our prices come in a little bit, and a lot of analysts are saying that this next report could be a tame inflation read. But I'm not so sure that's the case. On the surface, a lot of the reasons CPI was so hot last month are a little bit better. But this month, there could be something else in there. And first, let's look at what caused CPI to be so hot last month. The big major contributor to CPI last month was used car prices. Unless you've been under a rock lately, you've heard that car prices are rising just out of control, mainly driven by the shortage of chips, which is causing a shortage of new cars. And because of that, demand for used cars is at an all-time high. So we're seeing used car prices rise dramatically. Well, in the month of July, that slowed down. And actually, in some markets, we saw used car prices come down compared to last month. Now, those prices will still be higher compared to last year, but suffice it to say, the effect of used car prices on the CPI index this month should be significantly less than it was last month. Now, transportation only makes up 15% of the weighting in the CPI index, and car prices makes about 7%. So there are much bigger statistics out there, and we're going to look at some of these other ones to try to see where CPI might be coming in. Another big input to CPI is food. Now, food accounts for about 14% of the weighting in CPI, but that's broken up into two different categories. You've got food at home, which measures a little under 8% of that, and you've got food away from home that measures about 6% of that. Now, that's important because a lot of the commodity prices, right? Grains and meats, a lot of these prices have come down since their highs in June. The commodity markets were running red hot, speculation was taking over, and the prices were getting a little out of control, so they've come back down to earth a little bit. So the food at home price, we may see that coming down. However, the food away from home, I want you to keep in mind the situation at U.S. restaurants, because restaurants are packed right now, and restaurants are having a hard time finding help. And restaurants are starting to have to pay more to get help, or they're having to start limiting seating because they can't accommodate people. That puts upward pressure on restaurant prices. And restaurant prices, or food away from home, accounts for about half of the CPI's food weighting, a little less than half. So although some of these commodity prices have come down, the effect on food may not be what you think. We may actually see food flat, or it's possible it could even tick up a little bit. Now, there's other factors that input to CPI, such as medical, education. We're not going to look into those. Let's assume those prices are going up at about the same rate they've been going up. But the big one that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, and it's the single biggest input to CPI, is housing. Housing accounts for over 42% of the consumer price index. Now, the way housing is really measured is very funny. They use this owner's equivalent rent statistic, which honestly, I could talk about it for hours and it's just going to leave you scratching your head. What they do is they basically they call up homeowners and they say, how much would you rent your house for? Which if somebody was going to ask me that, I'd say $500,000 a month. But that's just me. I'll take what I can get. But let's just look at this in plain English. What have rents done? And if you look closely, oh boy, there could be a bomb about to go off in this CPI read. Take a look at this chart of rents in the United States. Now, this is a national index, and the CPI measures various cities. So differing regional economies will affect the CPI differently. But rather than look at all those individual data points, we don't have that kind of time. We're just going to look at a national average. And boy, oh boy, look at what national rents have done over the course of the beginning of 2021. And if you notice, that chart continues to steepen. And the CPI measures the rate of change. Well, a steepening curve means the rate of change is going up. And this rate of change going up is the single biggest input to the consumer pricing index. So while all these analysts are looking at last month's number and saying, oh, it was used car prices caused last month's number to come in so high, well, used car prices isn't going to come in so high this time. I don't think enough people are looking at rent. And rent accounts for more than double the weighting in the CPI that car prices do. So in a nutshell, the more I look at the numbers, I see the food number is probably going to be flat. Maybe it goes down a little bit, but I'm leaning towards flat because I think the big jump in restaurant prices is going to offset the slower increase at the grocery store. Transportation costs, we're probably going to see flat to even a little bit of a decrease there because used car prices just went way out of control in July. So the transportation input to CPI should be less this month around. But the one sector that the analysts are not looking hard enough at is housing, in particular rents. At the rate rents are increasing, there is a very good chance that we see a big surprise in CPI tomorrow caused by this spike in rents. I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to give you guys a number. A lot of these analysts, these are people who are better informed than me and they have access to better data than I do. So maybe they're right and we do get a tame CPI read, but keep your eye on that housing number. That housing number just might surprise us. Anyways, guys, that's just my 2 cents. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? Are we looking at a bigger or a lower CPI read for tomorrow? Place your bets, folks. There's absolutely nothing riding on it except bragging rights, but I'd love to hear what you think. Guys, I want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate you checking out this video. Please remember to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It would really help me out. In the meantime, live small and dream big.